I'm Full Paragon, and this is your guide to the EX Arena for the mid-level Bane for Konosuba Fantastic Days. This EX Arena is a character-focused defense arena. That means that it's similar to the Kraken Arena that we saw just recently. Basically, your score will be heavily weighted towards using the featured characters and reducing damage. The boss is once more immune to debuffs, and it uses poison attacks on your team. The featured characters for this arena are Darkness, Iris, Dust, Melissa, and Amy. Because of this, it's going to be best to build a team that's focused around dealing physical damage as well as mitigating damage. The boss will also target the first adventurer, so make sure you put Darkness there, as she's the best at reducing the damage taken. I'm going to go over things a bit differently. Instead of talking about recommended teams first, I'm going to go over each individual character, as the characters that you want to use will be the same, although which card you choose is going to be based both on team composition and what you have available. First, we'll talk about Darkness, since you'll want to run her in slot 1. Overall, the best character to run in the first slot is Swimsuit Darkness. This is because she's the best at mitigating physical damage and providing a powerful buff to your team, in this case a tier 2 agility buff for team. Other good choices for Darkness would be the Welfare New Year Darkness. This is because she provides a tier 2 physical attack buff for your team. After that, I would use PJ Darkness. The other choices that you have are either Original Darkness or one of her 3-star versions will work best. For all of them, you'll want to use her second super, as it provides a tier 3 physical attack buff as well as providing a tier 2 damage cut, which will be most helpful this arena. Talking about team composition, you'll want to use Swimsuit Darkness if you're not using characters that can provide agility buffs for themselves or the team, whereas New Year's Darkness provides a physical attack buff for the team that can be used in the gaps between activations of her ultimate. Make sure that you have a way to keep Darkness healthy as well she does have some minor recover abilities. It's not enough to keep her up for this entire fight. I would avoid using Christmas Darkness or the Welfare Darkness we just got recently, as they're better at mitigating magic damage, and this boss deals mostly physical damage. Additionally, Christmas Darkness works best with a mage team, because while that tier 3 agility buff is good on anyone, you aren't going to be using anyone who could benefit from a tier 3 magic attack buff. The next character is Iris. She's going to be your best option for a healer if you run her Super 2, as it will allow her to provide some pretty good healing for your team. I would only use her Super 1 if your Darkness has absolutely no problems keeping herself alive, which should really only be possible on lower difficulties. As for which card to use, the best standalone option is Ball Iris, as she provides a tier 2 self-agility buff, which will allow for even more damage and healing. I will give you the caveat though that she doesn't work well with Swimsuit Darkness, as the two buffs won't stack, but will rather overwrite each other. After that, other good options would be Halloween or Casino Iris, who are roughly equivalent, with Halloween Iris probably being a little bit better, as you can pretty much guarantee she'll stay healthy. They both also have a minor heal, which can be rather useful. After that, Original Flavor Iris is pretty great still, and if you don't have her, any of her 3-star cards will work roughly equivalently. Don't use Valentine's Iris here, as she needs debuffs to provide the most DPS, and this boss is immune. Next up, we have Melissa. This is one of the few times I will say that you should use Melissa's second super on the boss. This is because the majority of the utility from her first super comes from its debuff, and this boss is immune, while her second deals a little bit more damage. When it comes to her cards, Original Melissa is still the best option thanks to her tier 2 agility buff and the haze, although good luck getting that to land on the boss. However, if you're going to use Swimsuit Darkness, I wouldn't use her, as that tier 2 agility buff won't do you any good. In that case, you can actually use Kenpo Melissa. The boss is vulnerable to binds, which Kenpo Melissa happens to do. You're not going to get much mileage out of that, or her Affliction Punisher, but it could happen. Swimsuit Melissa is another good option. Her tier 2 self-strength buff isn't that great, and the boss is immune to the physical attack down she does, but otherwise she's alright. After that, take your pick of one of her 3-star cards, as long as you're not using Maid Melissa, whose double AoE kit is pretty awful. Either 3-star Fire Melissa or 3-star Lightning Melissa are going to be your best bets. If you don't have Arabian Dust, I would go ahead and run Melissa in slot 3. If you do have Arabian Dust, he's pretty good, and you could go ahead and run him in slot 3 over Melissa. If you have Arabian Dust and Original Melissa, pick your favorite and put the one that you think will do the best for your team there. When it comes to dust, far and away the best option is Arabian Dust. This is because he provides a Tier 2 party physical attack buff, which is of course incredibly useful. However, all the other dusts rely on debuffs or affliction, and they're just not very good. You could try Onsen Dust, but I don't think you're going to poison the boss very often, if at all, and Affliction Punisher kits are generally pretty awful. If you have Arabian Dust, he's good enough to run front and get great results, but the others are meh, and you should run them in the rear 1 slot. Use the Super 1, as it deals more damage, and the boss is, of course, immune to the debuff that his Super 2 does. Last and least is Amy. She's a healer, so just go ahead and run her in the rear 5. This is especially the case since Amy really has only one viable card here, which is, of course, the Welfare Cake Amy, who is typeless. She has an agility up, as well as a minor heal, so she's going to be your best option. Amy overall works best with mages, which the rest of the team isn't. However, a few days after this EX Arena starts, we should get the Arabian 1B banner, which comes with Arabian Amy. Unlike the other Amys, Arabian Amy is not only great, she can work well with anyone. She does still work best with mages, but what we're concerned about here is the fact that one of her skills provides ultimate gauge charge. That's good enough to use anywhere. If you'd have her, I would go ahead and run her. But pulling on that banner is a bit of a dicey proposition, and of course, the Welfare Amy does nearly as good, especially since the rear 5 slot probably won't come out very often, if at all, in this arena. If you have neither, pick your favorite Amy, and hopefully she'll never see the light of day. I'll go over a suggested team build here. This is the team I would build if you're going to use New Year's Darkness. The reason you'll use New Year's Darkness with Ballroom Iris and Treasure Hunter Melissa is that Iris and Melissa have a Tier 2 agility up, while Darkness provides physical attack buffs, meaning that they'll get the most damage. Make sure that you're using Super 2 on Iris and Darkness, and even Melissa, to get the most damage and reduction for your team, as well as that little bit of healing from Iris's ult. If instead you want to use Swimsuit Darkness, I would use a different Iris and Arabian Dust, who can provide a Tier 2 physical attack up, as this would best complement Swimsuit Darkness's agility buff. If you don't have Arabian Dust, that's okay, just use the best characters you have on hand. Most of the time, you won't see Darkness fall until late in the fight, so you'll probably only see the rear 1 character. If you get to the rear 2 character, I think that Welfare Amy is going to be your best bet. Of course, Arabian Amy would be even better, but in an ideal world, you'll never even get to her. There are other viable options for teams, however, I would make sure you're using these characters in roughly this order in order to get the top score. That's the video, thanks for watching. Come back soon for more Konosuba Fantastic Days guides, including the summoning guide to the Arabian 1B banner featuring Arabian Amy.